Before you ever stepped into an arena, you had to say a sentence out loud in front of witnesses. I will endure to be burned, to be bound, to be beaten, and to be killed by the sword. That was the actual oath. Not a metaphor, not a tradition you said half-heartedly. A legal promise that your trainer could do any of those four things to you, and you'd have no comeback. Most people who ended up saying that sentence didn't choose it. They were slaves, prisoners of war, or condemned criminals handed over with no say in the matter. But here's the part that tends to surprise people. Plenty of others said that oath completely voluntarily. Free men, sometimes from decent backgrounds, signed themselves up on purpose for the fame, the money, or simply because regular Roman life felt too boring by comparison. Imagine choosing this over your day job. Some genuinely did. Once you'd taken the oath, you belonged to a training school called a ludus, run by a manager known as a lanista. Think less evil mastermind and more investment manager, because that's basically what you were to him. A valuable, expensive asset that needed protecting, training, and absolutely not dying in your first fight. Training was brutal and constant, and your diet was oddly specific. Mostly barley and beans, which earned gladiators the nickname horderii, barley men. This wasn't a budget decision, it was deliberate. That diet, combined with serious training, built a visible layer of fat over your muscle, and that fat mattered for one practical reason. It protected against shallow cuts. A sword slicing through fat bleeds dramatically, which the crowd loved, without hitting anything underneath that would actually finish you off. You were, quite literally, padded for the show. And here's the detail Hollywood tends to skip entirely. Most fights weren't to the death. A trained gladiator took years and serious money to produce, and no lanista wanted his best investment bleeding out over one bad afternoon. Fights had referees, breaks, and rules. If you were losing badly, you could raise a finger asking for mercy, and the decision on whether you lived then passed to the man funding the games that day, often a local politician using the event to buy public popularity. The crowd's mood mattered too. Win them over, and walking out alive got a lot more likely, even in defeat. Different gladiator types fought in completely different styles, almost like character classes in a game nobody asked to join. Some wore heavy armor and a large shield. Others, called retiarii, fought with almost no armor at all, just a net and a trident, built entirely around speed and distance instead of brute defense. Watching a heavily armored fighter try to catch someone who could outrun and outthink him was apparently half the appeal. If you survived long enough and performed well enough, you became something close to a modern celebrity. Graffiti scratched into walls in Pompeii, actual surviving messages from actual Roman fans, describe certain gladiators as heartthrobs, the object of obsession for Roman women who had clearly never even seen them in normal clothing. Vials of gladiator sweat, scraped off the skin after training and mixed with dirt and oil, were sold as a beauty product. Wealthy women paid real money to rub a famous fighter's sweat on their face. Fame has always made people do strange things with their money, and if you survived your contract entirely, you could be granted retirement through a small wooden sword called a rudus, handed to you in the arena as a formal symbol that your fighting days were over. It meant freedom if you'd been enslaved. It meant simply walking away if you hadn't been. Most people picture a gladiator's life as short and brutal, ending the same way it started, badly. The truth was messier and stranger than that. You were property and you were a celebrity. You were trained to survive and trained to perform. The arena wanted you dead just often enough to keep things exciting, and alive just often enough to keep the investment worthwhile. Whether that counts as better or worse than dying outright probably depends on how good you were with a sword.